There will be spoilers ahead. Lots of spoilers, so be careful, won't you?
This is Movie Scam News, bringing you the fastest news from around the world. Mr. and Mrs. America and all the ships at sea. Flash! Charles Foster Kane, newspaper mogul, wrangler of print, supplier of questionable journalism to nearly the whole country, is still dead as of this day. Since his final gasp in bed back in 1941, this larger-than-life character has not moved an inch, breathed a puff, or added to his final words, Rosebud. Though it may seem inconceivable, Charles Foster Kane is indeed still dead. No one would have believed he could remain dead this long, this titan of the tall tale, the man who once said something akin to, "If you provide the pictures, I'll provide the war." We take you through the miracle of the motion picture, or at least the audible side of it, to our reporters who are witnessing this surprising and utterly remarkable story at this very moment. But before we do, I would just like to say, Charles Foster Kane one more time. And now, Max Mike Movies! Oh.
Yay. Very nice.
It's sad, isn't it, that a fictional character, not at all based on anyone who ever lived, would still be dead after all this time? Where's the sequel? Where's the franchise? What kind of movie is this? Well, it's just another that didn't win, which also just happens to be our current series, where we take a look at movies that maybe should have won the Best Picture Oscar, but didn't. You know what else should have won the Best Picture Oscar, but it didn't? That would be our host, Max. I didn't win Levine. Give us your acceptance speech, Max.
Well, I couldn't. I mean, I didn't really even have anything prepared. Well, okay.
Well, good. And
wait a minute. I want to thank the Academy, and then I want to send them an Indian to accept it for me.
Get off the stage.
And then I want to refuse the award. Get off
the stage.
Never.
Boo.
I'm coming up with a dart gun to take out the orchestra.
Yeah, so
don't even try to play me off, you bastards!
And I, who stand in his shadow eating ice cream all alone, am your other host, Mike, wasn't even nominated loose. As you may have guessed, this week's film is the notorious Citizen Kane, supposed masterwork of one Orson Welles, probably best known for selling wine and frozen peas. But before we get to him or the peas, we're going to get to you. Poll question. We ask you things, you answer. It's a great system. Last week's task was, what's your favorite theme or main song from a non-musical movie? Your results came thusly. Tyler Stewart was up first on Facebook with, quote, trick answer, Unchained Melody from the 1955 prison film, Unchained. Never saw the movie, but Unchained Melody is one of my favorite songs. Also,
wait, isn't
the entertainer...
Isn't that the one they use in Ghost? Oh, my love.
I don't know.
I gotta look that up.
If you know, write us at... Oh, well, we'll get to that later. Continuing with Tyler Stewart, also the entertainer from The Sting. End quote. Not a trick, as we don't require you to have seen the movie. Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah.
Also, extra points for knowing that the name of the song is, in fact, The Entertainer, not The Sting.
I thought it was the love theme from Sting.
Fired. Do you know the love theme from Fired?
Fired. He's fired.
Dr. Rebecca Pelkey wrote, quote, really too many great blockbuster themes to choose from, but beyond those classics, I've always loved the soundtrack to Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. Can I pick one song? Probably not, as it all works together so well, but Number One Crush by Garbage was one of the big songs, end quote. Baz. Thanks, Becca. Adam Mark, in one of his shorter answers, gave us, quote, Steppenwolf's Born to be Wild from Easy Rider, 1969.
Oh, iconic.
Born to be Wild. So that's a deeper.
Of course, the Casio Tina cover is the true classic.
To this day, I don't know her name. Born to be Wild may very well be the first heavy metal song. That's arguable.
Oh,
and the second verse lyric, Heavy Metal Thunder, marks the first use of this term in rock music. It's impossible to forget Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper motorcycling off to New Orleans to any other song. It's not my favorite film, but those exterior shots of the two motorcycling through the desert and mountains in between their parable-esque encounters with the 1960s town and communes, like modern-day Argonauts, is always stirring, end quote. That's a very memorable tune indeed. Thanks, Adam.
Yep.
Keith Wright, actor in that world-famous podcast Cue Footsteps, among other things, said, quote, One is Against All Odds by Phil Collins. If I'm not mistaken, that's what the movie's called, too. The other isn't necessarily the theme of the movie, but one of my favorites from the White Knight soundtrack, On the Other Side of the World, sung by Chaka Khan. Enjoy.
Chaka Khan. Everybody Chaka Khan.
Enjoy, end quote. We will. Thanks, Keith. Nick Hoffman's answer was, quote, I was always a big Scott Joplin fan, so The Sting, movie obviously, is certainly a favorite, and while The Entertainer is certainly entertaining, I like another Joplin piece from the movie a bit better, Seamus. It's melancholy and bittersweet in just the right way. Also, Team America. America! Yeah! End quote. Notice
that is a funny-ass song.
Had to beep that one. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, yep.
Thanks for the extra sound editing work. Val Koons, director, actor, writer of the aforementioned Q Footsteps.
Didn't know enough to spread the blame around, huh?
That was mean. Who also just had a birthday, offered, quote, I don't really have a favorite, but here are some that are great pieces of music and pretty much synonymous with their films. Number 1, Tubular Bells by Monk Oldfield from The Exorcist. As soon as we say that, you know what it is.
Yep.
Number 2, I don't remember if this was the main theme, but the intro to Barber of Seville, Rossini, in Breaking Away. I always think of that movie when I hear it, and it's one of my favorite operas. And 3, Vangelis' theme from Chariots of Fire, which goes something like this. Na, 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 na,
uncanny recreation.
Isn't it? I know. You don't even need an orchestra, just me. End quote. Rossini, made famous, of course, by Bugs Bunny. Thanks, Val.
Yep, that's how I learned it.
Me too. Bruce Hurd Jr. posted, quote, gotta go with Never-Ending Story and Jewel of Denial, classic 80s all the way, end quote. Watch out for that mud pit. Thanks, Buzz. Oh, no, my Artax, no.
Pony. Normally, I'm all in favor of pony death, but that was a sad one.
Get him, Bumpy.
I dare you.
Dave has a few things to say.
Hey, Dave.
Quote, too many to count. Thunderball is the one I sing at karaoke, even though I am not a tenor.
Oh, wow.
And I love...
Ooh, boy, that's tough.
Well, you have to be Tom Jones. It's the only way it works. And I love Many Rivers to Cross. Yes, Sir, That's My Baby is an awesome moment in 1,000 Clowns, but I suppose I will choose Repo Man because for most of my life I've been looking for the joke with a microscope. For Japanese flicks, I like the opening theme song in the first Abashiri prison movie, end quote. Always a trip with Dave's answers. Thanks, Dave.
Wow. Yeah, it takes us all around the world, that one.
Hey, I'm just happy I was able to say Abashiri. Dan Schaefer's response goes a little like this. Quote, Live and Let Die comes to mind, largely for nostalgic reasons, end quote. Thanks, Dan. Kelly J. Cooper sent, quote, original composition Electric Dreams from the 1984 movie of the same name. Favorite?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know it personally.
I forgot that one. Yeah. Bud Cort as the voice of a computer.
Oh, weird.
It is.
Favorite overall, Swinging on a Star, as sung by Bruce Willis and Danny Aiello in Hudson Hawk, 1991, end quote.
Oh, Mike hates that movie.
Extra bumpy bucks for Kelly. Thanks, Kelly. Charles Forsyth wrote, quote, Ennio Morricone's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is iconic, end quote.
Oh,
that
sure.
It is. Thanks, Charles.
By the way, don't you mean Charles Foster Forsyth?
I do not. Oh, wait.
Charles Forsyth Kane?
Is his? No, it isn't.
No.
For a second, I thought I knew his middle name, but I don't. Mike Weasel Dans offered simply, quote, Men in Black, end quote. Thanks, Weez.
Catchy.
Is that, what's his name from...
That's Will Smith.
No. Is it Oingo Boingo? What the hell's his name? Mark Mothersbaugh. No, that's him. That's Devo. You know who I mean. Guy who did Batman.
Guy who did...
the theme song, all the music to Batman. Oh, dear God.
Oh, Nelson Riddle.
No, that's the
Nelson
66 version. Never mind. We're just going to cut that part out. I know, because I'm the sound editor. Last and yet first, we have Vince from way, way, way up north in the frozen wastes of some country no one's ever heard of. He sent...
Counting last to first, that's how they count in Canada.
No, it isn't. He sent via Penguin Post, quote, I absolutely dig Save the Earth and its accompanying dance routine at the start of the English dub version of Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, as Mike well knows. But I won't mention his reciting of it for the animated short I made in the voice of Jonathan Harris because that might be embarrassing, so I'm not going to say that, even though he just did.
It's not only mentioned, it's on the website in the comments. Go see it. Click the link.
Save the Earth!
It's hilarious. It really is. It's like a platypus talking like Dr. Smith, reciting Save the Earth lyrics. It is transcendent.
And who wouldn't want that? He continues, when I ran a video store, the employees would stop everything and dance and sing when I put this on. I saw it in the cinema and it really spoke to me, or something. It seems crazy in a Godzilla film. I am surprised Mike hasn't tattooed the link to the video on his face. He really is kind to put up with my projects. This was a series that included readings from Jaws 2 and other things. Enjoy, end quote. And enjoy we will. Thanks, Vince.
Indeed.
Yeah, I remember the Jaws 2 one was particularly enjoyable to do. But honestly, having Jonathan Harris say anything is particularly enjoyable to do.
Oh, yeah.
But Max, this was your puppy. How would you call it home?
What? That makes no sense.
I ran out of metaphors.
The main one, I got to agree with Dan, is Live and Let Die was always the one, especially considering the movie isn't that hot.
No.
You know, as Bond movies go, it's not one of the better ones. But that song is so friggin' memorable, even if grammatically, at least one of the lines is so messed up that I knew an English teacher who used to use it as an example. That is, in this ever-changing world in which we live in, that's 3 uses of in. You don't need that. But I go with that. The other song, and this is just pure sentimental, and I don't understand it, but In Going My Way, the
with
Bing
and
Crosby
Barry?
movie. Yep. When Bing sings Turalura, I don't know why, I always tear up at it.
Well, it's that Irish side of you.
Yeah, that's right. The O Goldbergs in my family.
Iceberg, Goldberg, what's the difference?
Yeah, that's right. When we used to sit around Dublin getting sloshed on Manischewitz.
I just freeze it and make popsicles.
What about you? What's your favorite song coming out of a movie?
Oh, I got a few. I was surprised we only got one other person that mentioned a Bond film, but, there you go. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I chose Goldfinger because Shirley Bassey.
Oh, yes.
That voice is just like deep velvet.
She could blow doors off a building, yeah.
Yeah. Singing in the Rain. It's a fun little catchy tune, which might be a movie we might talk about.
Technically, that's a musical, though, that kind of violates the principle, so you must die.
No, but I'll go with another one that violates principle.
Yeah.
Help! I really
need somebody?
Help!
Not just anybody.
Help! How about Mrs. Robinson?
Oh,
from The Graduate.
Well, that whole Simon and Garfunkel soundtrack is so cool.
Yeah. And the last one I have is a personal favorite. It's Bet Your Bottom Dollar from Tapeheads, because quite honestly, again, not the whole soundtrack, but the song specifically from the Brothers Diamond, or the swanky modes, depending on which part of the film you're watching, I think were really good. So
we love the swanky modes.
And probably tons more, yeah.
Yeah.
The answers you gave us were just so good, we can't help but ask your help just one more time. What do you think the best movie ever made was? Not necessarily your favorite movie, but movie you think just made the most out of the medium and really is just the best. Can't imagine why I'm thinking about that. Let's start some fighting out there. And you can start the fight in so many ways. Ways we'll tell you about at the end of the show. But right now...
Science crazed!
I need a better word for fired that means the same thing, but somehow is harsher.
Well, this is going to be tough. It's going to be kind of a toss-up between Rogue Warfare 3 and Deep House.
Been a while.
Yeah.
I'm still hoping for that film about Zangief's ass. But if we're going to drag those things out, right now we want to learn more about Citizen Kane, don't we?
Tell us things. The facts.
Budget. 839,000 buckaroos.
Wow.
Take 1.8 million, but only with a re-release. This movie tanked at the box office on initial release, and there were boos whenever its nominations were announced at the Oscars that year. Yikes.
I wonder who paid for those.
I don't know. Wells managed to get a clause in his contract that stipulated he was to be left alone with no interference from studio executives. When they would show up on set, the actors would all stop what they were doing and start playing softball till the executives left.
Sounds like a good way to damage the sets or break the lights.
They were pretty big sets.
Thank you. Yeah, it's true.
There's a story that the supposed subject of this film, William Randolph Hearst, wanted to discredit Wells and planned to have a naked woman jump into his arms when he went back to his hotel room one night. The photographer was waiting to shoot the whole thing. Wells was tipped off and stayed somewhere else.
I'm surprised. I thought Wells would be like, excellent, send two.
I don't know how much of a ladies' man he was.
Yeah, it depends who you believe.
Yeah. Though he was about 10 years too early, Hearst also tried to claim Wells was a communist so as to once again discredit him and to keep the movie from being released. Hearst was livid about the whole deal and went so far as to refuse to review it or any other RKO movies in any of his papers. He also tried to buy the negative from RKO in hopes of destroying it before the movie was released. But Wells had already shown it to critics who raved about it in non-Hearst papers. The original story was going to be, more or less, based on Howard Hughes' life, and Joseph Cotton would have played the lead. But Wells figured no one would believe all the stuff Hughes did, so changed the character to a newspaper baron. And hell, by 41, Hughes was just getting started. While the restoration is indeed great, the original negative, sadly shot on the explosive nitrate stock, was lost in a fire in the 1970s. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Wells tried to buy off Mank. That's Mankiewicz, who wrote the screenplay with him. He wanted the writing credit to be his alone, and he paid Mank a chunk of change. But the WGA wouldn't hear of that. As for the money, it was too late for Wells to get it back. Mank had already spent it.
Good for him.
A dramatization of the writing of the script for this movie was the subject of another movie, Mank, which is well worth seeing. Not least of which because it has Gary Oldman in it.
See our entire episode on Mank.
Yes, please do. Why did those birds in the background of the beach picnic scene look so weird? Well, they weren't birds. They were pterodactyls, and the footage was from Son of Kong.
What?
Yeah. We'll get back to the special effects in this film. Wells was the first person to be nominated for Best Actor, Director, and Screenwriter in one film.
Wow.
Didn't win. Sorry, Ted. There were rumors that Ted Turner wanted to colorize this movie, among many others he actually did. It was all nonsense, as Wells owned the rights to the film. But when he heard about the offer, Wells was quoted as saying, quote, "Tell Ted Turner to keep his crayons away from my movie," end quote.
Right on, Orson.
Yeah. And dear gods, this movie might have more trivia attached to it than any other we've ever done. We can't even knock the tip off the iceberg. So unless, Max, is there anything you want to throw in at this point?
Well, two of the big parallels between, I mean, you may come up with this later organically, between Hearst and Charles Foster Kane, in addition to the whole may have started a war just to sell papers.
Oops.
Yeah, which apparently Hearst did say, allegedly, that you provide the pictures, I'll take care of the war. And he was talking about the Spanish-American War, but also Susan Alexander, who is the singer, in quotes, that that Kane ends up with for a little while, is very likely based on Marion Davies, who was an actress. And by the way, she was an actress, but that William Randolph Hearst was associated with, much younger. And apparently, in a similar thing, Marion Davies was apparently a terrific comic actress, but that wasn't dignified enough for Hearst, and he tried to turn her into a dramatic actress with less than ideal results.
Yeah, apparently there was somebody else that she was also based on, and apparently Marion Davies took it very, very badly, and Orson was very apologetic, saying, yeah, the good parts of you are good parts of Susan Alexander I based on you, and the other parts are not you, but there was no way that anyone was going to extricate that.
No. I mean, there's a ton of other stuff, but as you say, there's way too much.
Oh, way, way too much. I never even got to most of the, what happened during the shooting of the film and editing. But the one of the things I pulled out was that the editor, I don't know if you noticed this, the editor was a name that you might recognize, Robert Wise.
Oh, God.
Yeah, who would later direct many, many things, including West Side Story.
Ah, my favorite, yeah.
This is what happens when you forget things. It's called age. Anyway, unless you have anything else, let's go to the
Did
plot.
you notice who one of the other writers was? He's uncredited, but John Houseman.
Oh, no. Because he's not credited. That's how I didn't notice.
Yeah, also, I think they brought him in to write 2 scenes or part of
I was going to say, I don't remember his appearance in Mank.
Nope.
I'm sorry. Mank! Isn't it like McClintock?
Exclamation point. I think so. There is an exclamation point.
McClintock!
Cats!
McCloud! Anyway, let's get into the plot, shall we?
Let's.
It's 1941, and the biggest name in yellow journalism, Charles Foster Kane, has died. His last words, Rosebud, confuse and confound the reporters assigned to somehow make sense of this larger-than-life supreme capitalist. But try they must. So they go off in search of anyone or anything that might give a glimpse into the real person behind the news stories, political ambitions, and scandal. We find out that Kane's mother inherited what was thought to be a useless gold mine that turned out to be worth a fortune. She sent her only son off to be raised in the big city, overseen by the banker who brought her the news. He went from school to school, we assume, until college age, whereupon he went from school to school, never really finishing. By age 25, he'd come into his own, financially, and could do literally anything he wanted. So he did the obvious. He went to a broken-down newspaper he owned in New York and started running that. Before long, his paper was the biggest selling in the city. He wrote stories that took on local politics, supposedly exposing fraud and corruption, or was he making some of that up? Through various friends and witnesses, we see Kane marry the president's niece. Then he takes on the president with his newspaper. We also see him fall in love with a woman he meets by chance after being splattered with mud one night. We then see his own political dreams shattered by his supposedly crooked opponent when his secret love tryst is found out. We see the following divorce. We see the marriage to this amateur singer and Kane's obsession with her becoming a beloved opera singer. Spoiler, not gonna happen. We see his fortune grow and grow, being used to build a giant castle-like fortress of a home, filled with tons of art from around the world, rare plants and animals more fit for a zoo, or really the wilds of just about anywhere else. Kane slowly closes himself off from the world, driving even his second wife away from him, and, in the end, dies alone in bed. Through all their digging, the reporters come away with no more better an idea of who Kane was than they had in the beginning, and the clue to his final words is carelessly burned so that no one, except everyone watching this film, will ever know the key to Kane's soul. The end.
The film. Nice.
So thank you. So the usual question, Max, do you remember the first time you saw this?
I do.
Oh.
I was in college, and it was in a film class.
Why do I have a feeling a lot of us saw it that way?
Yeah, I think so. Although the problem was the movie, the big twist of who Rosebud is, and if this is a spoiler for anyone, shame on you.
It's 80 years old. Come on.
It's 80 years old, and this is how it was spoiled for me. It was in a Peanuts cartoon.
Oh.
I didn't know what the movie Citizen Kane was. I never heard of it. I was, 8.
Yeah.
And there is a scene where Linus is watching the movie on TV, and Lucy comes in going, "What are you watching?" Saying, "Yeah, Citizen Kane." She says, "Oh, yeah, I must have seen that like 10 times. And Linus says, "Yeah, I've never seen it before." And as she walks out, she turns around and goes, "Rosebud is his sled." And in the last is Linus rolling on the floor going, "Ah!"
It actually gets...
I'm like, what the hell does that mean? I didn't understand.
Well, you were 8.
Yeah.
But to this day, Max still doesn't understand.
Yeah, who's Rosebud?
Yeah. No, it was actually given away in an episode of Columbo, among many, many other places. It kind of became a punchline in a way.
Yeah.
Because it's a twist. It's one of the earliest Hollywood twists, really, if you want to call it that. But I honestly, I want to say, I might have actually seen it for the first time in film school.
That would fit.
Yeah. And I've seen it. I actually haven't seen it that many times. I've probably seen it maybe 3 or 4 times, including for this show.
Yeah, I haven't either. We'll talk about it. It's not a movie you need to see that often.
No, I don't think so. Well, although this time was a little eye-opening. So let's quickly go through the actors. There's oh my God. Well, it's the Mercury Playhouse, so there's lots of people. One big surprise that I did not recognize, but let's start at the top. Let's start with Orson.
Ah, yes. I see.
I mean, you got to give him credit. The dude was a really good actor.
He was superb. He really was a triple threat. He could write, he could act, he could direct.
Yeah.
Couldn't sing, but he could write, he could act, he could direct.
And I'm glad he doesn't try.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot of jokes made about him, et cetera, but in his prime, and he is 26 at this point.
Yeah.
26. And he's making his film.
He was a good-looking guy.
Well, and that's
very
funny.
Striking.
Actually, he wasn't. So even when he's playing his youngest self in this, apparently he had what were called temporary facelifts, which I think refers to Scotch tape. But he has said that, even when people said how good looking he was, he's like, I was never that good looking. It was all because of the makeup. So yeah. But
okay, fair enough.
Joseph Cotten. I mean,
our old friend Joseph Cotten, who keeps showing up in our movies.
Well, he was in The Third Man, that's for sure. I don't remember where else he showed up.
He shows up, I believe, in The Manchurian Candidate. He was in at least one other one we did.
He was one of those Hollywood actors that was never quite A-list, but was solid B all along. And I don't mean he was in B movies, but I mean he was never. He did star in films, but
he wasn't a big star, but he was in over 130 movies. I mean, sure, he was also in Soylent Green and The Concorde.
They're made from people.
They are. They're made from people.
Oh, that Soylent Green's real good with some Soylent sauce. Okay.
Soylent Green. He's also, in Wells's other big movie, The Magnificent Ambersons.
Well, and even though a lot of people think it's a Wells film, he only acts in it briefly. He is in Third Man, and he plays the starring role in that. I got to say, his starring role in that is actually really, really good when he plays Holly Martin. It's one of my favorites. Dorothy Common-Gore does a really great Judy Holliday in this. Oops.
Yeah.
I mean, she kind of is.
Yeah, kind of. And, of course, Endora is in this.
I did not recognize her at all.
Nope. Agnes Moorehead is unrecognizable as Kane's mother.
And she, very brief part, and here's the thing a lot of people don't remember is that before Bewitched, Agnes Moorehead was a very well-respected actor. And she plays the cold, domineering mother really well for 30 seconds. And I'm not trying to cut her performance down at all. I'm serious. It's a short part, but it leaves
I do want to talk about that, the whole cold, domineering thing. I'm not so sure. That's what I always thought, but there's a little throwaway line that I honestly did not notice the previous times I saw it, where when she's talking about they're going to send him away, and the father says he just needs a good thrashing, and she looks at him and says, that's why he has to go away, so you can't reach him. And you realize she actually does think she's protecting him. I mean, there's also she gets $50,000 a year, which in 19 whatever, actually probably 18 at that point, 18 whatever. That's a lot of money.
Well, and story-wise, let's come back to that because we have a few other actors to go.
There's a lot
to talk about in this film. That being said, a lot of the other actors don't have as big a part. Ruth Warwick plays his first wife, Emily, who's fine. She's there.
She does a nice job.
Everett Sloan as Mr. Bernstein is fine. He shows up. He's been in Hollywood. He's in tons of other things.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say, though, I wanted to put maybe a little emphasis on the one potentially not great performance in this film, and that's Erskine Sanford. He plays the newspaper editor. Boy, is he like rubber facing and mugging at the camera when Kane first showed up.
He's like he's in another movie. He's
you just hear him just blubber. It's just he's a bit over dramatic.
It's an interesting thing to me at the end of the movie. I'd actually forgotten this. They introduce the players and they show clips of each one, and they point out that all of these guys are not established actors.
Right.
And I remember thinking, oh, come on, some of these guys are fairly old. I looked it up. That Erskine Sanders, this was like his second movie.
Yeah.
And before that, he just did a bit part here and there. They really were. This was their breakout for almost all of them.
They're all radio players with Mercury and Orson Welles.
Yeah.
So, none of the other performances are in any way bad. Most of them are just small. You don't see these people much. Or there's one character, the main reporter, is almost always in the shadows. You barely ever see him.
You hardly see his face, I keep forgetting what his name was.
Me too. In fact, I'm going to go
I
with...
don't think it matters.
It doesn't really.
It doesn't. It really doesn't.
But yeah, so very solid performances all around. And this is a film that requires it because some people only have so much time. But you remember, especially Agnes Moorehead, you remember that like
you do.
American Gothic expression she's wearing as we pull out from her. But yeah, let's get to the rest of the film. The opening shot feels more like a Batman movie to me. But
no trespassing.
Yeah, and the big castle.
I have to admit, the first thing I thought is, there are monkeys doing monkey things.
Well, all right. So let's take care of this right away. There are a number of special effects in this film. Now it's 1941. I understand, but every scenery painting, every matte painting, and the quite obviously fake octopus in the beginning of the film really do not stand up. And,
well, they borrowed it from The Bride of the Monster.
Oh, you know, they might have. You can just see the hand shaking it off screen. And I don't remember seeing the octopus before, but it's literally like... Blah, 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 blah. And it's... The thing is he's trying so hard. He's trying for so many interesting camera techniques. And he actually said that the cinematographer for this was his favorite cinematographer. And everything he learned was from this guy. And this guy does some amazing stuff. There's some scenes where we get incredible depth of field, which had never been done in Hollywood before.
Yes. The deep focus shots he uses, those are unique. Yeah. Some of them are amazing.
Especially there's a scene near the end where Susan is leaving him, and she goes out through one door, down in the hall, through another door, to another door, and it's like everything's in focus. Everything. It's incredibly hard to do that, especially back then.
Yeah. And then they turn the camera when the head servant guy is looking back down. You see all the way down the hall.
Yeah.
There's Kane in the doorway. He's in focus, and the guy in the foreground is in focus. I don't know how the hell he did that.
Yeah, amazing things. There's also some scenes that I'm like, how the hell did they do this? Like the scene where we were on the roof of the club where Susan Alexander in her later years is singing, and the camera seems to go right through a neon sign. I'm like, how could you do that? Turns out, and this is so simple and so elegant, the sign was made in two parts. The camera got close enough, they pulled it apart, and the camera could keep going.
That's cheating.
Yeah. Well, there's another scene, I think,
clever that is.
Later on where it looks like the camera goes right through a table. Same thing. The table was cut in half as the camera got close enough and the table was out of shot. They just pulled it apart. But
darn clever, these Americans.
Some of the camera angles in this, whenever we see Kane talking to his best friend Jed, it's always from a lower angle. When it's anybody else, it's from a higher angle. So we're getting all these interesting views that help really give us our opinion of Kane, even without hearing him talk.
And the stuff he does with light and dark. When the reporter goes in to read the Thatcher manuscript in that huge vault, and the sunlight is blazing down onto the table in this gigantic room, it looks like a temple. To this guy, but it's also incredibly cold and empty, and there's this 30-foot portrait of the guy,
and you're not allowed to touch anything.
A lot of that. I remember when they're showing shots of Xanadu, all I could think of it was Cameron's house. It's very cold and very beautiful, and you're not allowed to touch anything.
This is the kitchen, and that is your breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I will say that does work really well is Wells' aging makeup. Now, to be fair, this is not how he will end up looking when he gets older, but nobody seems to has yet to figure out how to figure that out. But I gotta say, the way he ages, and he ages fast in this movie, is done really well. I don't see...
The makeup is phenomenal. Same with most of the older characters, even like Joseph Cotton. They make him look old. He's convincing.
Yeah. Apparently, though, the wig they had picked up for Joseph Cotton really didn't work, and so they were going to get another one, and Joseph Cotton just basically grabbed a tennis visor and threw it on and said, "We'll do this." So,
that worked.
Yeah. It was.
I gotta say, they all, particularly Wells and Cotton, do a really good job of acting old.
Yeah.
The body language, the way the cadence of the voice changes, it's very convincing. And that is surprisingly hard to do. To play an old version of yourself, it's too easy to do a cartoon. My hip.
Well, here on Max Mike, what is it?
It's too easy to turn into Abe Simpson.
Hey, Mool, gimme. Yeah, and especially that scene where Susan Alexander leaves him, and he just goes around her bedroom throwing things around. He's lurching around because he's not the young person that he's literally 26.
This is a lot of effort for him as an old man. It's very convincing.
Yeah.
And you are worried, oh God, he's going to hurt himself.
Well, he did. He actually ripped open his wrist, and the only reason they didn't have to redo the take is you don't see the blood pouring out of his arm as he's doing this. But yeah, a little bit of trivia I had to cut out because there was a lot. One of the other things that for me did not work, and this is fair and true of almost every Hollywood film that decides it has to take place at some point in the snow, worst snowman ever.
That was a bad snowman.
Man, just don't. No.
Yeah.
The snow itself is fine. Like, it's okay. We could tell it's a set. It's
perfectly convincing asbestos.
Well, probably, sadly. Yeah. But, yeah. So we have this story about this man who is totally based on fiction. And of course, that was a huge thing behind the film, and may very well, as Max had pointed out, have been the reason behind some people booing it when it was up for awards.
And it has been suggested that's why it didn't win, is that Hearst campaigned in the background very quietly to get people not to vote for it.
Yeah. The thing is that critically, it was a critic's darling. They loved it. And it's been considered by many people to be the best film. Of course, that's in quotes. I would at least narrow that down to best American film, if only because I doubt most of the people who call this the best film ever made have really seen many films from, I don't know, India, Iran, or you know what I mean? Like, we haven't, so, but whatever. This is one of those films that's been held up as a example of prime filmmaking.
It's basically, this is how you do it. Watch this and do that.
Well, and here's the thing. We're talking about Orson Welles, who himself has not exactly made any films up to this point. I think literally any films at this point.
No, he made the Magnificent Ambersons.
Wasn't that second?
Nope, that was his, I think, first film as director.
Okay, because I knew he had a two-picture deal with RKO, and I thought this was first because he nearly bankrupted them. But you could be right. I have never seen a Magnificent Ambersons. But
I think it's a tad overrated. But anyway.
Well, and there's a whole big story with that one about how it could have been saved if they'd let him edit it, and they tacked on a happy ending and blah, 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 blah. But there's certainly no happy ending here.
Nope, sorry, I'm wrong. Magnificent Ambersons was a year after Citizen Kane.
That's what I thought.
But he was also the narrator in Swiss Family Robinson in 1940.
And he played the planet in the Transformers the movie cartoon, so whatever.
It was not a planet, it was the evil robot Unicron.
Sure. Wasn't it Unitron?
No, it's Unicron. I checked this.
Good, thank you.
Unitron is
thorough.
Unitron is another thing. I just can't remember what it's from, but it was Unicron.
Yeah. So what we get is more or less a fictional story about a fictional person who was larger than life. And, I don't know that much about William Randolph Hearst, but quite honestly, probably deserved to have this movie made about him.
If you believe the stories, even about 5% of the stories, he deserved a lot worse.
Yeah.
Hearst was, he was a megalomaniac.
Yeah.
Allegedly. The Hearst organization still exists, and I don't want them coming after us.
Yeah, but if you want the real story behind William Randolph Hearst, just watch Newsies. Those kids, they're carrying the banner. I mean, he is in the film. I think, is he played by somebody weird?
Oh, is he the one who's, I can't remember if it was Pulitzer or Hearst, is played by, oh, God.
Yeah, played by Robert Duvall. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just Newsies will tell you what you need to know.
Oh, yeah, that'll tell you the truth.
Yeah. He started the term was first applied to him, yellow journalism, and it had to do with a character in a newspaper comic called the Yellow Kid, apparently. But the idea that he wasn't exactly reporting the facts or
he slant things a lot. He was sort of a proto Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah. Interesting commentary on today, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because now we have AI to do it for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how, the one thing I'm not sure of is, I don't know if Hearst started out as an idealist, because
Right.
Kane at least sort of does. He has this declaration of principles and says he'll always tell the truth, he'll fight for the working man, the little guy, and he seems to mean it.
Why?
Because he wants them to love him.
That's why. Here's the thing about this film. So the big twist, which we've given away from 83 years ago, is that the last words he speaks are Rosebud, and we spend the entire film not knowing what that is, or in the case of most people who've seen it in the last 40 years, knowing exactly what it is. Yeah. And I think the idea, and this is my interpretation, is that he's remembering the last time he was actually happy.
Yeah. He wants to get the innocence back, the simple joy of childhood.
Or even the knowledge that somebody loved him.
Yeah.
My feeling is that when he comes to New York and he has this thing of principles and he's going to fight for the working man, is, like you just said, he wants them to love him. And it's the first step in a way that he thought he could fill what was essentially an empty life, regardless of how much money he had.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. He may not have, he was a kid, he wouldn't have understood if, in fact, his mother was sending him away to protect him. All the kid would know is the people he trusted most, his parents, the people who were supposed to love him and take care of him, said, yeah, goodbye.
Well,
we're going to send you off with this creepy-looking banker.
And the film starts out in a very Dickensian way, really, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't get sold to the I was going to say the mosh pits, the coal pits. Can you be
Come on, Oliver!
Yeah, it's old Dickens punk stories. Yeah, mosh pits sold to the dreaded mosh pits of Britain.
Yeah, that's right. Come on, I'm the Artful Dodger. Oi, oi, oi!
Did you go to Australia? From whence nary a British lad escaped. No, so it does. It has a very Dickensian. I mean, not least of which because it's happening a little bit later than Dickens, but still in that sort of.
Not
area.
Really. No, it's the Dickensian era. It's the end of the 19th century.
Yeah, and from there, of course, he has fame and fortune, fame and fortune. But he has
prepare the standard. Rich and famous contract for
as stated by Orson Welles in The Muppet Movie. Poor Orson. So we do learn a lot about his life, but there are some things that are left out that do make me wonder, A, about him, and B, why they were left out. And one of them is they literally cut from you're 8 years old being sent off with a banker to you're 25 and have gone through all this stuff. Like, where was he?
Well, we hear about it. He was sent to all these nice boarding schools all over the world and kept getting thrown out of them.
Well, that was a college.
But true. But the implication is the same thing happened when he was when he was younger.
I guess. Well, we never hear about his parents ever again. Ever.
Nope. His parents vanish. I think their stove and the sled shows up at the end, and that's it.
Well, my guess is that they wouldn't have divorced because that would have given the husband part of everything, and so she would have stuck with him and just like annoyed him, or quite honestly learned witchcraft and turn him into a toad. Because that's what Agnes Moorehead's going to do.
Called him Durwood, yes.
But I thought it was kind of interesting that they make such a point, or Orson makes such a point of the relationship with his mother in particular, although he seems to be pretty close to her. At least the father initially comes off as pretty close to his son and is upset that he's being taken away. It's only at the very end that we learned, well, maybe there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
But
well, there's also the idea that part of the father seems to be upset is because what it says about him.
Right.
It's like saying I'm not a good father.
And apparently that's exactly what she's saying.
Yeah, that is in fact what we're saying.
It's hard to tell because that twist, which is not stated, it's not even at the end, it's not obvious. All we know is it's his sled. So we're left to interpret that. I don't know if there's another way. I'm sure there's been many dissertations and school papers written about what the sled means. But to me, it means that he is last remembering the time he was happy when on his deathbed and how all of this led to that. And then there's this amazing scene, which is totally ripped off in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where we see that amongst all of these crates of things, lots and lots of things, I swear, every prop RKO owned at the time.
Very likely.
There's this one thing that is literally the key to the entire story, and it just gets tossed on the fireplace.
Yeah. Well, it was going to be studied by top men.
Top men.
Yeah.
So
that's also just that tracking shot across all the crap that's in Xanadu.
Right. And the disrepair
is amazing. Yeah, you see it's falling apart. And everything, these apparently priceless artifacts are just heaped on each other or shoved in the wooden crates.
And I think in a lot of ways it's meant to be a visual metaphor for trying to fill the hole that he himself has dug.
Stuff.
Because there's San Simeon. Oops! I meant Xanadu. Yeah, not San Cementi.
I'm sorry, that was not Xanadu. I did not see Olivia Newton-John anywhere or Gene Kelly. And there was no roller skating.
Thank the gods for that.
Yes, praise be.
Man, we've gotten way off here. Yeah, I mean, that's what I get from this film, is that it was a film about somebody who did his best to fill his life with material things, only to find out that none of them meant anything. Tried to spend his life making people love him, or at least the people around him, and finding that that's not how love works.
He wanted everyone. I mean, clearly that's why he runs for office. That's why he wants to be a governor. There's that great scene where they're having the big celebration for him, and they are literally singing his praises. There's actually a song about him, which they don't say it, but he commissioned.
Yeah, or wrote.
Or wrote himself.
Yeah.
And, got him up there with the dancing girls.
And there's actually a really good quote from him. I think it's somewhere around that scene, which was, quote, "If I hadn't been rich, I might have been a really great man," end quote.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, that's telling. But the funny thing is as self-reflective as that line is, he doesn't seem to have learned anything from it.
I also get the feeling that he's just saying that to piss off the banker, because that's who he's saying it to, and he's saying, "Look, money doesn't mean anything to me." Because he obviously hates this guy.
Yeah,
and he just spends a lot of his time and uses the paper to go after the guy and his businesses. And we aren't sure why he hates him, except that he's the one who in effect took him away, even though that was his job.
What I found interesting is that usually people talk about this film because of the twist, and it's like, it's his childhood and stuff, and it's like, we're actually told by one of the characters in the film exactly what's going on. In fact, he says it to the reporter that really lays it out. And I actually never noticed this before, but at one point in his older age, his buddy Jed says, quote, "That's all I really wanted out of life, love. That was the life of Charles Foster Kane," end quote.
And that does kind of sum it up.
Yeah.
When he meets Susan Alexander, and they do have kind of a meet cute.
Yeah.
She's got a toothache. He's just been spattered by a passing carriage.
And she thinks it's funny.
He's covered in mud. She thinks it's funny.
And she doesn't know who he is.
And no, she doesn't know who he is, and he's so stunned by this. "You don't know who I am, and you like me anyway." It's really kind of touching. It's kind of childlike in that. And then you watch as what he tries to do to her, and then he's like, okay, I love that whole thing with when he's exposed with her, caught with singer in quotes, and like Jedediah says, he built that opera house, he got her trained just to get rid of the quotes.
Yeah.
Just so, and he...
That's, of course, one of the things that finally breaks his friendship with Jed. Jed, who is the more or less the theater critic. Jed has left earlier than that. He's gone to Chicago, so I don't know why. Orson. Why?
I'm not sure why
he builds the opera house in Chicago instead of New York, but he does. And of course, that puts Jed in a really hard place. Maybe he thought, I know, I'll put it in Chicago because my best friend certainly won't write any bad press reviews of my wife and her.
Maybe.
Singing. Which has one of my favorite shots in the film. When she goes on stage.
Oh, is it the two stage hands?
Yeah, where they pan up, or I should say tilt up. And they go through the wings and all of the different stuff until they finally get to the scaffolding above, and there's two stage hands. They just look at each other, and one of them just holds his nose, and it's like,
yeah. It is a great moment. No dialogue, it's just, okay.
In the end, in a way, this film is kind of a spiritual film, and I'm not a spiritual person. Well, what's its message? Its message is no matter what you do, if it's trying to get things or you filling with stuff, it's never going to mean as much as you want it to. It has to be something you have to give first, and it's not stuff that doesn't matter to you. It has because
you have to have some other meaning.
Well, Susan says that you never gave me anything I actually wanted, and probably what she'd want was him, which is really sad.
She wanted him to be nice to her and to have fun with her
and just enjoy life.
It's like Bernstein says, when the reporter says, "Well, he did make a lot of money," and he goes, "There's no trick to making a lot of money if all you want to do is make a lot of money."
I don't know if he's right or not, but I appreciate his fortitude in saying that as he checks the ticker tape machine behind him.
Yeah.
I got to say, there is a very a happy note at the end of the film when they're burning everything. At least when we go outside of Xanadu, we realize that the new pope's been elected.
That's right. White smoke billowing out.
That's black smoke.
Literally,
so I guess technically, isn't it black smoke is the Pope elected?
No, white smoke means he's been elected. Black or gray means they haven't decided.
Oh, so I guess we haven't decided about the new Pope yet.
No, they hadn't chosen the Pope. They hadn't chosen Pope Kane yet.
Yeah. Do you notice who got?
Why isn't there a Pope Kane? That's a great name.
Well, that's not as good as hilarious, but one of these days. Did you notice in the credits who got the lowest billing of all the actors?
I don't remember.
Orson Welles.
But nice touch.
Yeah, except that the
wait,
next
you mean he
credit,
goes on last?
All the players are listed. He is last, except that the next credit is written and directed by Orson Welles and Mankiewicz. So, I'm sorry, Mankiewicz is how they pronounce it. I think it's Mankiewicz, but whatever. There's probably lots more to talk about, but we have other things to talk about. Not least of which is what we think of the film, the greatest,
and also
film.
What actually won that year,
and should it have won? Shall we get to that part?
Let's do that. The finish.
So, Max.
What? Oh, yes.
I know. It's right behind you.
Oh.
So, you've seen, how would you guess, 3-4 times?
Oh, I'd say 3 or 4 times, yeah.
Yeah, do you remember
hundreds.
Do you remember the last time you watched it and why you might have watched it?
Oh, boy. I think I showed it at a movie marathon. I think that was, and that must have been 20 years ago.
Okay. So now you watched it.
It's been a long time.
You watched it for this show here.
Yep.
What do you think?
I think it's amazing. I mean, it's very dated. It's very much a thing of its time. It's it's 1941. It's black and white. There's still the sort of affected way of acting and the shots and such. The camera work is so innovative for its time. And the writing, while it's a little ham-handed sometimes, it seems obvious now, 80 years ago, but some of the lines are so like the people will think what I tell them to think.
Yeah.
People still quote that. And old age, the one condition you don't want to be cured of.
Yeah.
I think it's an amazing example. I mean, we were talking about, you're asking the question for the next week of, what's the best made movie? This is certainly a contender because this is just like, this is what you're supposed to do with a movie camera. I think this movie still is amazing. I get that some people, it's very easy to look. It's collected a lot of baggage over almost 100 years. But this thing is amazing. What about you? When was the last time you saw it? Do you know?
Oh, boy. I don't think it was actually that long ago, because occasionally I get in the mood for black and white films. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen The Third Man. Amazing film. Yeah, let's see our entire episode in Third Man. And I probably did see it in film school, because it's like you don't get out of film school without seeing Citizen Kane. But, it's different. It is very different when we sit and watch these movies for the show, for me anyway, because I don't want to get up. I don't want to be distracted. And I'm taking notes. So I'm looking for things that I think that stand out or are interesting. Yeah. And I will have to say, I've seen better.
Really?
So one of the problems with this is the same problem that a lot of art has, especially art that's revolutionary, is you have to take it in context of its time. The reason being is nobody had seen anything like this at that time. Since then, we've seen things that have done amazing camera work or stuff you would not have believed. In some ways, I think visually, Third Man is a better film. Yes, the angles in this are really amazing and the way they're being used and thought about. But some of the black and white, the rich depth of the shadows in that film and its backdrop, to me, are in a way a little bit more powerful. I think... especially for someone who's 26 and has never directed a film before. And, you know, he helped write this. They've gone back and forth because people will say, no, he came up with the idea. Historians have gone through notes and they say basically it was both of them. They both wrote the film. Mank, of course, would go on to write many other great films, but it is an achievement. And I think it's worth seeing. Some parts don't hold up. You know, the special effects parts really don't. They stand out. Let's face it. And that's part of the time. That's all they had, right? There wasn't a lot of the ability to do what they can do now. I think that the acting and I think the sheer ambition in making this film is amazing. I think it's worth seeing. Greatest film ever made? I think that's Hollywood congratulating itself after the fact, because of course they didn't want to do it while Orson was alive, because he wore out his welcome there, which is sad, because he would still go on to make some interesting films. I'm not saying it's bad at all. No. Just top of the heap. It's got a lot going for it. I have
to agree to disagree. I think it's way up at the top. If it isn't the pinnacle, it's pretty close.
Well, you know what was the pinnacle that year? The film that did win the Oscar for Best Picture, a film I'd never seen or heard of. How Green Was My Valley.
Oh, this is the Maltese Falcon, right?
No, How Green Was My Valley. Now,
I give up. How green was your valley?
It was so green, we shot it in black and white. It was so green.
That's right. The John Ford, of all people, movie.
Now, to be fair, I saw it and I'm like, wow, like, apparently they went to Wales. I mean, where the hell? You know where they shot that?
Modesto?
Close. Santa Monica.
I was kidding.
No, he wanted to film it in Wales in color, but it was 1941 and...
oh, yeah, there was a bit of a to-do going on in Europe, wasn't there?
That was not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, you probably had heard of this film. Had you seen it before?
I've heard of it for years. I have never seen it. I just watched it the other day, because of this, the show.
So, what did you think about
I didn't know it was John Ford either. I mean...
And I think after the film you didn't know it was John Ford, but...
No, I did, because if you've ever seen The Quiet Man, you can see, okay, yeah, this is the other kind of John Ford movie.
So, what did you think of the film, and do you think it should have beaten Citizen Kane to the award for Best Picture?
I think it's a charming little, somewhat schmaltzy film, but no, I don't think it should have won Best Picture. I don't think it should have beaten Maltese Falcon either.
Yeah.
Well, it's beautiful to look at. It really is. You know, the San Bernardino mountains are delightful.
The hills of Santa Monica.
Yes, and their famous coal mine, apparently.
I don't really go down into it too much, and it's somewhere else.
No, we go down. We go down into the set. Yes, we do. And I like the music. I like the fact that there's a lot of singing in Welsh.
Yeah. It's a lot of spitting.
Yeah, and I am sorry, Roddy McDowall was a kind of creepy-looking adult, and he's a kind of creepy-looking little kid.
Oh, I didn't find him creepy-looking.
I did. He's got those eyes, those Village of the Damned eyes. Oh. But he is also very adorable, and it's hard to have... He's a major point in the film. It's hard to have kid actors. Mm-hmm. No, sorry, Jake Lloyd, but... He does a nice job. I think a lot of the performances are cute. Walter Pidgeon, I wouldn't have known it was Walter Pidgeon except for seeing him in the credits. It's okay. I think it's a nice movie. I don't think it's the best picture.
I think it's weird. Yeah. They have all these weird... Well, first off, who's the movie about? Because we start off and it's being narrated by Hugh, H-U-W, Roddy McDowall, who I saw and it's like, that looks like Roddy McDowall, but it can't be. It's 1941, and I checked, and sure enough.
Yep, a little bitty Roddy McDowall.
So we start off, and it's him and his dad, and they go wandering around I remember when Dad and I used to wander around the village. Mm-hmm. And then the coal came and blah, blah. It's like, okay, so it's going to be about him and his dad. And then the movie's like, no, we're going to be talking about the dad. We're going to be talking about how the dad is a pillar of the community and everything. And, but now people are starting to talk about there being unions because they're not being treated well. And so now Dad's against the unions because he says we're being treated just fine. And then suddenly they have cutbacks come. And so, well, maybe, no, everything will, they'll bring our wages back up later on. No, that doesn't happen. And then there's this big to-do. So now the film's shifted between the village and the dad. And then the boy and his mom either are pushed or fall into the frozen water. We never find out which. And so now the story's back to watching. Will he recover? Will he, blah, 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 blah.
I was a little confused about that, by the way. What happened to him? Because
he got cold.
He fell in cold water and he may never walk again. What? That's not how cold water works.
I don't know. Mom had the same issues, but,
She was fine.
So then we switch. Now we're going to be talking about, the sister, she has an interest in the priest in the town, played by Walter Pidgeon.
Yeah, not a priest. He's a minister. It's very different. He legally could get married.
That being, that's not even the problem. The problem is that he's sort of pro-socialist.
Gasp.
And at the end of this film, I can't tell if Ford is pro or anti-socialist because
it's hard to tell.
Well, yeah. So we start dealing with that, and then of course the minister is like, it wouldn't be right for me to court you. So she says, well, fine, I'll go marry the son of the guy who owns the coal mine, and then she goes off and we never see her husband again, and then we think she's gone. The four sons who can't get jobs because they get kicked out because of the whole thing, then they go off to live elsewhere in the world, and we don't hear anything from them. So the plot just keeps going all over the place. It's very scattershot.
It's about the whole family. It's basically a story of a Welsh family.
Well, then Dad dies.
Yeah, but that's right at the end.
I guess. I just felt very scattershot to me and very unfocused, as opposed to Citizen Kane, which is laser focused
on one guy. But this, I didn't think it was unfocused. I think it's like a slice of life. It's a family story, and it's just, it's very melodramatic. It's very schmaltzy.
I felt it was more like a Frank Capra film than it was a John Ford film.
Then there isn't enough of a happy ending for it to be a Frank Capra film.
Yeah, I found it inconsistent, and it's probably more palatable to the movie-going audience at the time.
I think at the time it was the safer choice. People, they like kids.
But if it were me picking Best Picture, I think you'll agree, I would definitely have picked Maltese Falcon.
I would have gone with Citizen Kane. I think it's a better movie. I do. I love Maltese Falcon. It's a great movie. It's smaller in scope. It drags at a number of places. And it's oddly enough harder to follow sometimes.
Well, we never do find out who shot that guy.
Yeah. We don't know who shot that fat barkeep. No idea.
It's really, I would say that Maltese Falcon's a more enjoyable film.
Yeah, I'd say it's more fun.
Because Citizen Kane is not fun, let's put it that way.
No, it's brilliant to watch, but
well, let's end on a high note. Let's say we both agree How Green Was My Valley should not have won Best Picture in our...
In our opinion, there were better options.
Yeah. At least two.
Anyway. Yeah.
But what another better option is for you folks to answer our poll question. And next week, we would really like to know, if not Citizen Kane, or maybe you'll choose Citizen Kane, what do you think is the best motion picture ever made? If you want to narrow that down to American motion picture, that's fine. But what do you think is the best the medium has to offer to this point? And you can tell us by emailing us directly at us at maxmikemovies.com. Go to our website, maxmikemovies.com, where you can talk with Vince or occasionally Cheeseboy or even one of us once in a while, and find all of our tons of other episodes there for your listening pleasure, carefully wrapped around with Lark's vomit.
And lovingly frosted with glucose. Yes.
You can also go and answer our poll question on Facebook, where we are, big surprise, Max Mike Movies. And last but not least, we are on every podcast app known to man, including, apparently, we're on YouTube
Music, at least back to episode 99.
Which, you'll have time.
Yeah.
But what we also have time for is a movie for next week. Max, how are we continuing Didn't Win?
Well, we are talking about the very controversial anti-Semitic film of 2008, Jew No. And I know this is going to be a very problematic film for a lot of people, and it's very uncomfortable for me.
Max?
Yeah?
Once again,
I got everything
wrong.
Everything wrong. No, we're going to be watching Diablo Cody's 2008 which many people thought should have won, Juno, which was beaten by No Country for Old Men, which is, let's face it, pretty much the opposite of Juno.
It's a bunch of men who don't get pregnant?
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, well, then I've seen it.
And at no point does Juno kill anyone with an air gun, so it's a very different movie.
You know, that's what Juno was missing, was a little bit more Javier Bardem. That's what I think.
Yep, absolutely. But we'll see. Did this deserve to win? Is this a worthy contender for Best Picture? We'll find out. Until then, Silencio, old man.
Who you calling old man?
This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.